In Ultimatum League, we are going to be given a choice. We can either take the easy road out, accomplish a small task, and take our pittance. Or we can push ourselves even further than we thought possible, reach for the stars, and reap the bountiful rewards that we know are owed to us. Now, if you're anything like me, you're most likely going to want to go for the second option. And to do that, we are going to need a powerful build, one that is able to handle everything in the game without breaking the budget. Between massive overhauls of the basic loot tables and reworks of almost every single league that you can think of, on top of the Atlas trees that were added to the game in 3.13, Ultimatum League has a ton to explore. So now that we know what we're up against, let's take a look at today's build. Now, as always, I'm going to be giving you 5 powerful league start options so that you can choose the one that looks like it's best suited for your needs. This time around, there are going to be a few classic builds that have been on this list before, however, there are also a few newcomers. My goal for these league start videos is to provide you every single bit of information that you need to have a successful league start. These videos will include complete leveling information, as well as full path of buildings with leveling trees, multiple gear sets, frequently asked questions and notes, as well as anything else that you might need. If you have any further questions that isn't answered in either of these places, you can either come and ask me live on my Twitch stream at twitch.tv/bigducks, or you can come and join my Discord and ask for help from my community. Both of these are linked in the description. And the build that we're going to be talking about today is the Purifying Flame Mine Saboteur. This is a build that kind of snuck up on us in the last couple of leagues. It allows you to turn insanely cheap items into an absolutely insane bossing character. Now, the cool thing about Purifying Flame Mines in general is that not only is it excellent at bossing, it is also extremely comfortable while clearing. The main reason for this being is all of the consecrated ground that is left by the Purifying Flames. One other thing that a lot of people don't know about Purifying Flames is that every single time one goes off, it sends a ripple through all of the consecrated ground that it creates, turning this into a very, very solid clear character. But as I said, this is mainly meant to be a bossing character. Mining builds are excellent for bosses as you're able to preload a whole bunch of damage, and the more that you put into them, the more damage that they do. Now, there are other abilities that some people have been using for mines, however, I found Purifying Flame to be the best balance between clearing, bossing, and also just utility. You can begin playing Purifying Flame Mines from as early as level 8 if you like. Now, when we talk about a mine build, you pretty much always go Saboteur. There are a few outlying cases where you can go things like Ascendant, but for the most part, Saboteur is the boy when it comes to mines. Now, mines are changing a bit in this league, so it's something that we need to prepare for. Previously, mines simply had a reservation, but now going forward, they're going to have a reservation and a mana cost, because we don't really know exactly how some of the new mechanics are going to work, and some of them may work out quite well for this build. The main benefits of being a Saboteur is that we get immunity to Shock and Ignite, we get an absolute ton of regeneration, we get permanent blind on pretty much any enemy that we hit, as well as a ton of mine throwing utility. This build can be played many different ways, however, the version that we're going to be talking about here is a pure life version. You can play this build low life, there's a lot of different things that you can do, but I feel that the life version is the easiest to get going, and if you do want to transition into a low life version later, you can, however, that's not going to be covered in this guide. Although there might be some shenanigans with low life and petrified blood, but that, once again, will be something that we'll have to figure out in the coming days. This build has an absolute ton of regeneration, and due to having full dodge as well as Wind Dancer, can actually take a hit, although we really don't get hit that often. So between all of this regeneration, we can get upwards of 6,000 to 7,000 life if you'd like to push it that far, as well as a bunch of very, very easy to obtain gear. This build is an excellent league starter. Mine builds have been very good for quite some time when it comes to that. So if you've been thinking about giving a mine build a try, this is an absolutely excellent introduction to mines, and you can go wherever you want from here. So if this build didn't do it for you and you're looking for something else, make sure to check the playlist that's up in the top right corner now to find something that may be better suited for you. However, if you want an easy to gear, super high damage bossing and clearing character that has a ton of regeneration and doesn't really require very much to get there, then let's go ahead and take a closer look. Hey guys, Big Ducks here, and welcome back to the channel. Now remember, if you're enjoying this style of content, make sure that you like this video so that YouTube knows to recommend you more of it. Also, over 75% of you are still not subscribed to this YouTube channel, so if you're enjoying my particular style of content, make sure that you subscribe so that these videos will show right up in your feed, and you can always change your mind later. Now, without further ado, let's get back into the video. Alright boys, so if you're looking for a mine build, Purifying Flames is one of the easier ones that you can choose. Now, the reason being is that Purifying Flame does have a nice old big juicy consecrated ground effect that not only looks kind of cool, but has a bunch of actually really good uses. So as I said before, Consecrated Ground is a very, very powerful mechanic. It gives you life regeneration, it gives you crit, it gives you a whole bunch of good stuff. And as you can see, When you place these mines down and you detonate them, you'll notice that there's these little ripples that go all the way through the consecrated ground. That actually does damage. The idea being is that while you're clearing and while you're running around and dropping all these down, you'll notice that it ripples all the way through out there and does a giant big wave of AoE, and that's going to hit everything in there. Now keep in mind that it can't double dip, meaning that you can't hit them with the mine and then it also do the ripple AoE. It can't hit the same target. But this is a very, very straightforward mine build. There's nothing too special. You don't actually have to target at all. If you're used to like mine abilities that auto target, this one does the same exact thing. It's going to toss the mine down and it'll automatically target all the enemies that you need to. It does damage both through the target and as well as when it hits the ground, so pretty solid. Now we could go over some of the abilities. Honestly, there's not very many abilities that this build uses. We've got Detonate Mine on our left click. This is so that while you're running, you don't actually have to hit Detonate if you don't want to. It's just a very, very easy way to play this build. You can remove this and just use the simple D key for Detonate. This will give you a little bit more control when you're bossing. However, I like having Detonate on left click. It just makes my life so much easier. It's less buttons that I have to press. We do have Purifying Flame. Now, I just talked a little bit about this, so I'm not going to go super deep into it, but the idea is that it has both a hit portion as well as the ground effect portion, and it does create consecrated ground everywhere that it hits. This ability is a physical to fire conversion ability, and you'll notice that we do take Avatar Fire to get the other half of our physical damage converted to fire. That gives us 100%, and then that's pretty much all there is to it. We scale just generic mine damage. We try to get as much mine throwing speed as we can so that it feels okay to throw these mines. Now, in actual action, when we're playing the build, it's a lot faster because we do use charged mine support. This does give us increased throw speed depending on our frenzy charges, which I think we get like 4 or 5 of. So we throw a lot faster while we're doing that. We do use an Arcanist brand, very common on my builds. Our Arcanist brand is about the same as always. Arcanist brand, Wave of Conviction, Flammability, and Combustion. Now, you can actually change out Combustion for something else. I've kind of been messing around with it, where I have Elemental Focus in the main link and Combustion here. However, you could just take Combustion out, put like increased duration here, and move Combustion back into the main link if you wanted to. I'm not 100% like sold on what's better, to be honest with you. I think either or is fine. And then we do just use Flame Dash as our movement skill. You could use Smoke Mine if you really wanted to, but throwing another mine on top of everything else might get kind of annoying. You could use Normal Dash. I just prefer Flame Dash because it's one ability that just needs one slot and it works perfectly fine. And then we use Enduring Cry just for a quick boost of HP and also to get endurance charges if we like them. And that is pretty much it for that. Now, as for the auras that we use, there are 3 separate auras that we use here, and I do switch between them depending on what's going on. Now, always you will be using Skitterbots. Skitterbots is very powerful for this build. It allows you to trigger your mines a second time, and it also just does give you some generic mine damage, as well as some chill and shock. This is a very powerful aura, very, very good. We do use Herald of Ash. I mainly use this for clearing, and then when I'm on bosses, sometimes I'll swap off Herald of Ash and put the Clarity on, just so I have a little bit easier time sustaining mana if I'm running out of flash charges because I'm playing wrong or something like that. But for the most part, you're mainly just going to be using Herald of Ash. That is it for the abilities. There's nothing else to really worry about here. Now, when it comes to leveling this build, you will be starting with Stormblast Mine. You get it at level 1. It's very, very simple to use. You can use this all the way up to like, I don't know, you could use it up until like 30s if you really wanted to before you swapped over, or you can swap directly over to Purifying Flame Mine at level 8 when you do get Blast Chain Mine. You could honestly just self-cast Purifying Flame, but I personally would say to use Stormblast Mine until at least 8, and then you can start using Purifying Flame Mines with Blast Chain Mine. However, I'm probably going to say the Stormblast Mine by itself might be better until a little bit later on. So early on, you are going to want to do the wand recipe. There is a very simple wand recipe that you can do. All that you're going to do is you're going to go to a vendor anywhere in the early game. Just make sure that you collect resist rings. So what you'll do is you'll just try to find either a white, blue, or yellow resist ring. It can be any kind, like say we'll just grab a sapphire ring here, and then you're going to want a blue wand. So we'll take this driftwood wand here, we'll hit it with a random transmutation, we'll hit an alch on this one over here, and then we're going to take a orb of alteration. We're going to take these 3 things to the vendor, and depending on what rarity the ring is, it will give you added damage to spells of the type of ring that it is. So this is a cold resistance ring, so you're going to get cold damage here. I would wait until about level 20 so that you can use the highest tier of this that's available. That is going to be with a yellow ring. Use 2 of these wands and it will literally carry you all the way into maps. No lie. Mines with this added damage here on just these 2 wands will be enough to get to maps. You can get to maps, do some early mapping, get a couple of chaos, and then you should be able to afford a Tremor Rod very, very early on. This item is very common. I tend to find like 5 of these over the course of just playing a league, and they're normally not insanely expensive early on, maybe like 10 to 15 chaos at most very early. You get a 5-link one of these and you're set for most of the game. So that really is going to be most of what you need to know for leveling. The only other thing is to remember that you can craft resistances through this bench here. I do try to stress that these resistance crafts here are very cheap. You should just be putting them on all of your gear as much as you can. That is something that I do suggest that you focus on, is just keeping your resist up, keeping your life up, and making sure that your damage is enough to keep going. That is pretty much it when it comes to leveling. Now, I do want to talk about gear, but to do that, I'm going to jump over in the path of building. It's much easier to go through the gear and the other things there, so we're going to go and do that now. All right, so now that we are over here in the path of building, let's go ahead and look at the gear. Now, this is the gear of my character that you saw here. I am missing a ring just because I converted this from another character, but as you can see, the gear is very simple. There's nothing really too special going on here. We have the Tremor Rod. What this does is it gives us plus a level of socketed spell gems. It gives us that 7th link, which is the Blast Chain Mine that's super important for this build. And it also gives us mines can be detonated in additional time. This is how we get those big giant blast chains that you would see there. Now, something to note when talking about blast chain, it's actually very important if you want to do top DPS with this build to understand how blast chain works. You're going to want to stack up a bunch of mines at one given time and then cast them all without re-detonating over and over again. Each mine in the blast chain is going to cause you to do significantly more damage. And when you start getting up to like 40, 50 mines exploded, it's a lot of extra damage. So make sure that you do keep that in mind. The other uniques that we have are Comb's Heart. This is just a very simple, good unique for this build. Increases fire damage, gives us a bunch of life. We don't need very many links in this build. You could use something like a Kintsugi, or you could just use any other rare chest piece, would be perfectly fine. And then you could probably do some other shenanigans with some more stuff like Flame Wall and things like that. Machina Mitts can be a little expensive, but these are insanely good. And they do just make the build feel significantly nicer as soon as you do get them. Power charges are good for this because it's going to make you have an increased recovery rate of life and energy shield. It's going to make that leech feel much better, and it's going to make it so that you can just kind of go around and do whatever you want. Literally all the rest of the gear is just whatever you can find, right? Like, you need stats, you need resistances, you need life, and nothing too special here. There's no specialty flasks that you really need to use. Like, there are some that are good, but you can just use simple blue flasks, no issue whatsoever. Keep in mind there are alternative gear sets here. Like, there is a budget gear set that just has the Tremor Rod and a bunch of just simple, very simple rares. Then there is something like an expensive set of gear here where you start using some more interesting kind of items. You start getting like much better crafted rares, things that have much better stats on them. You're going to be finding things like a bunch of crit multiplier, mine throwing speed, all kinds of good stuff in here, okay? So that's going to be more expensive gear, and even the expensive gear on this build is not too insane. I probably could go like low life or something, but it's typically not even needed. So that is going to be pretty much it for the gear. Now, I do want to talk about jewels a little bit. Cluster jewels are something that you could use on this build to get a lot more throw speed, but there is actually plenty of stuff to get on the tree for this build that cluster jewels aren't necessarily required. You could get some if you wanted to, and when I redo this tree a little bit more, going in the middle of the league, once we see some stuff that's going on with Petrified Blood, because I have some curiosities on some things I want to do with that, we'll look more into cluster jewels and such. In the meantime, what you're really looking for is going to be cluster jewels that give you throw speed of mines. That's the main thing that you'd really be looking for. For our normal jewels, as I said before, throw speed is very powerful, and you do want to get jewels that just have life, critical strike multiplier, as well as mine throwing speed. Those are the main things that you're looking for. Just a bunch of these, any slot that you can get them is going to be perfectly fine. As I said about the cluster jewels, if you do want to look into cluster jewels, just look for damage, look for mine throwing speed, and so on and so forth. And that is going to be pretty much it for jewels and gear. Now, the next thing that I do want to talk about is going to be the leveling trees and the skill tree in general. So starting out with the first leveling tree, you're going to start here and you're going to be moving through this damage and mine damage. You're going to be starting with mines and ending with mines, so you can actually just straight up take these trap and mine damage nodes. They're perfectly fine. You could take elemental damage, but why? And we're going to move over into this life here. We're going to come up and grab Saboteur. This is going to give us 2 additional mines that can be placed as well as a bunch of damage. Then we're going to head all the way around here and head up towards these nodes here. Now, this is important. When Saboteur got some of its reservation nerfed, I think it was in 3.13, these nodes are actually much more important to get these reduced reservation of skills that throw mines. We do want this throw speed as well, so I actually suggest that you take this whole wheel, and then we're going to be heading over towards these mine nodes here. And the first node that we're going to be getting now is going to be throw speed. Throw speed is excellent for a mine build for play feel and for damage. This gives us 25% increased mine throwing speed and 5% increased area of effect for each mine. That's pretty big. The next tree that you're going to be seeing seeing here, we are going to be filling in a bunch of crit as well as getting our dodge. You can scale crit extremely early on this build. Now, I do want to make a caveat here. If you are annoyed by mana, you can go for these nodes very early. This efficient explosives and these mind damage and reduced reservation nodes, you can get these 3 nodes very early and they will help you quite a bit. Those nodes are very good for reducing the mana cost of the actual ability, so you can get those if you need to. Beyond that, as I said, we do scale some crit very early on, so we're going to be grabbing like this crit node, these crit nodes here, as well as these crit nodes. That's the main thing that we're looking for. The next ascendancy point that we get is going to be Pyromaniac. This is going to give us immunity to Ignite and Shock, which is just kind of nice. And the main thing here is going to be the regenerate 2% of life per second for each mine detonated recently, up to 10%. This is essentially permanent 10% life regeneration at all times. Very, very powerful. It is definitely the second node that you want to go for. Now, after that, we're going to be moving towards closer to the end of the game. We're going to be scaling a little bit more crit. We're going to come down here and get some life, prepping to head down this way. And we're going to move over a little bit more to the left of the tree, grab some more life and mana, as well as Arcanist Dominion. We really do need to start scaling a little bit of mana here, because as I said, you're going to start having mana problems, potentially depending on how good you are at using a mana flask. And then our third ascendancy node is going to be the Born in the Shadows. This makes it so that we take reduced damage from blinded enemies, nearby enemies are blind, and we blind on hit. So this is a ton of defensives for this build. It gives us a bunch of blind, which is very, very good. And then when we finish the campaign and do our skill point quests, we are going to fill in the Wind Dancer node here. This is very good for dodge and evasion builds, as well as some life. And we're also going to head up towards Avatar of Fire, get the rest of our conversion for our damage, as well as some regeneration and life here, and some crit at this point. And then as we do head into our in-game tree, we're just going to be filling in some extra nodes. We get a ton of crit here, ton of crit here, some life in here, some crit multi here, a little bit of damage and crit in this section here. Also, we are going to start filling in some more life nodes, start picking up these frenzy charges, as you can see here. These are going to give us a ton of throw speed due to the charged mine support that we use. And that's pretty much it for that. The final skill tree just fills in some jewels, and that is really all that we're looking for. You can see we get jewel here, jewel here, jewel here, jewel here, jewel here. And that is pretty much going to be it for the tree. It's very, very straightforward. The fourth ascendancy node is going to be Explosives Expert. This just gives us a couple extra things here. We get crit multi from burning enemies because we do ignite. We're going to get crit strike chance against shocked enemies because we are going to shock and chill due to our skitterbots. So we get damage pen, critical strike chance, and crit strike multiplier all in one. So now I do want to talk a little bit about path of building in general. Path of building, I do spend a decent amount of time on these POBs, just getting everything that you need to know in here. So there are a bunch of skills here in the skills section. This is going to have setups for how you should level, what abilities that you should use, what skills to link in them, where you should transition, how to do the different things in your build. Tells you what auras to use, what movement skills to use. Then it does have the end game set up here with all of the upgraded skills. There are, as I said before, multiple item sections. This is something I'm going to prove in this build at some point. I'm going to make a low life version of it, but it's not something that I've personally tested, so I don't want to give you a build that I haven't tested at some point yet, but look forward to that in the future. And then as always, there is a configuration section here. This should be correct. Check to make sure that if you do change anything in the build, you do look in here and make sure that you're going to get an accurate representation of your build just by putting in the correct numbers here. And then last but not least, there are a bunch of notes. If you do have issues or questions with the build, this is the first place to look. If not here, check over the video, make sure that you didn't miss anything, and that is the best place that you can get all of the actual information about this build. Everything is pretty solid through here. And as you know, this is a section about cluster jewels that kind of tells you which one to go for, but I personally didn't end up using cluster jewels in this build. As I said, I'm going to update this build later on in the league. But that is pretty much going to be it for the path of building. All right, boys, so remember, if you do have any further questions beyond anything that I went over in the path of building, anything that I went over this video, you can always find me on my Twitch stream at twitch.tv/bigducks. I stream Monday through Friday most of the time, and I probably will also be streaming a lot more on the weekends as soon as the league does start. Now, beyond that, if I can't answer your question or I don't happen to be live, make sure to join my Discord. Both of those are linked down in the description. I have a ton of helpful community members, and I'd appreciate it if you come and be a part of the community as well. Ton of fun, hang out with the boys. You can even find me in there talking a lot of the time. So remember, boys, if you enjoy this content, make sure that you like this video. Subscribe to the YouTube channel for more content similar to this, and stay safe out there in raid class. And I'll see you guys in 3.14 Ultimatum League.